Hey, this is John. Today we're going to work on the setup screens. Specifically, I want the setup screen to kind of look like this. Essentially, it's going to have 4 different tabs and then a place where you can change settings in that tab, and then buttons for either starting a new game or resuming the current game. And these buttons will either appear or disappear based on the context. You know, if you're in the middle of a game, you'll have a resume game unless you change one of the game rules, in which case you can only start a new game. So essentially, it's going to be all interactive. What I'm going to do essentially is I'm going to build the disabled versions of these buttons and then have a real button overlay whatever is currently active, or the other way around actually. I want the active version of all these buttons or these tabs and have button overlays of the disabled buttons, so that you can click on them and it would show the other disabled buttons on the new tab. You'll see it when I get it running. Got lots of notes. I'm going to start with the Game Rules tab because it has the most options to present the user. So it'll be the busiest of the tabs, and that'll let me know whether the thing is going to work okay. To get started, we're going to have to add in or back in the ScreenManager class and put our fixed layout pages underneath the screens underneath the fixed layout class. So we're going to add like 2 more layers into our layouts. Let's get started. Okay, a brief pause. Let me tell you what I've done so far. I've added a new class called App ScreenManager, and that's now my new root Kiwi class, my new layout. And it holds all the screens underneath, to which I have now, this used to inherit from fixed layout. Now it's actually a screen rather than a fixed layout, so it's a screen layout. This will be more obvious when we look in the KV file. And now we also have 4 more screens, 1 for each of the tabs that'll be selected in the settings. So settings opponent screen, settings rule screen, settings screen, which is bit of alliteration there. Essentially, this is where you change the look of the game screen, the screen for that. And then the sound screen, we can change the sound settings. And those are all fall underneath ScreenManager. And then here in the Mancala.kv file, we have up here at the top, instead of our root being game screen like it was before, now the root is App ScreenManager. And here's all the screen classes that it's managing. So I can run for any of these 5, and it always defaults to the first one. So that's the one that comes up in the beginning. And these are all order specific, is my understanding. So this is screen 0 through screen 4. And here I'm declaring each of my settings screens. I have to give them a name. That's very important. I'll show you why in a second. We need to put our fixed layout, which we worked in much earlier videos. Put this in underneath the screen. So here's fixed layout root and then fixed layout. By the way, for the fixed layout library right now, you have to have both. You have to have the root, and then you have to exactly 1 entry underneath fixed layout root, which is fixed layout. I don't even remember why that is. Anyway, let's go down here. We got each of the 4 screens for settings, and here's our original game screen. And I've tabbed everything in, so now we have a fixed layout root and a fixed layout. So essentially everything was just tabbed in 4 more spaces here. And now it's given a name called game screen. The reason for the names is very important. Down here I've added a new button to our main screen in the upper right hand corner, just a small blue box. Later on I'll turn that into some kind of little widget logos that represent settings. But right now it's just a blue box. And on release of that button, it launches it doesn't launch anything. It just simply executes this command here, which is set app root current, which is app. This is our app here. To set the current screen to settings opponent screen. So clicking on that button will change screens. Now, it won't close the old screen. The old screen will run in the background, but you won't see it anymore. It'll bring the game screen up to the front. Now, all these screens right now, I still have it popping up the same birch board background, so it won't look like a settings screen. Oh, also, You know, before self.root IDs is what I need. Now it's not that. I keep having to mess with this. It's frustrating. It's self.root and then the screen that you're caring about .IDs. So screens and then game screen. I created some constants so I wouldn't have to memorize the numbers up here. So let's run this. Let's make sure it works here, but it should work. Yeah, there it is. Setting up the board, but I don't have to wait for that. Clicking on that takes me to what will be the settings screen. The next thing is to make those screens. So I'm going to be going into GIMP and doing a little bit of image manipulation. Again, I'm not looking for perfect. I just wanted to get it functional. So I'm going to just throw in some stuff that works, but we'll try to put them into the right position. So I'm going to use the grid overlay so I know where to put the buttons properly. Okay, let me show you what I've done in GIMP. This is not really programming, but this might be useful to see what I've done. I've got one file that I'm creating all 4 screens with. And so I can put text on the screen and copy and duplicate different layers and make them disappear. Like if I want to do the game rule screen, I can see you're making visible or not visible certain text. I've got like some of the game rules over here. Who goes first? That kind of stuff. So I just turn on and off different elements on the screen to make different screens. And then when I have what I want, I do File, Export As. Notice though that this has a whole bunch of has a grid over it. This is a grid I made a while back that shows me my 1920 by 1080 grid as reference from the lower left-hand corner. Very useful because this, by aligning things along the grid as much as I can. I mean, I don't have to do that, but it makes it easier for me to put the correct coordinates in for like buttons that overlay this or buttons anywhere else on the screen. But even if I can't make it align, at least I have a reference here where I can know, okay, here's 400 and here's 500, and this thing looks to be about 430-ish or so. I mean, it makes estimation a lot easier, and I can be more exact later if I want to. So I've got I got my grid, and I also put in what I'm calling here a reference. I mean, I don't want that to be visible on the screen, but by having that transparent overlay on there, it makes it easier for me when I'm doing my work. And what I've done is I've actually printed out, it came out really small for some reason, but printed out a version of this thing. So now when I go into the KV file and I try to put all the buttons in the right spot, I have a visual reference I can go to and start counting grid points and go, oh, this goes here, this goes there. It makes things a lot easier, I think. Let's try it out. Let me put the KV file together. All right, I think I've got it. We've got now under each of these screens, here's the settings opponent screen. I've now got 3 buttons, not rules, not screen, not sound. Essentially, these are the buttons that take you to the other screens. So each of these 4 settings screens will have 3 buttons representing connections or buttons that take you to one of the other 3. And also have 1 button now that takes you back to the game. So I just put it there, and that's in the lower right-hand corner. And I put those in all of these screens. So it should work. Let's try her out. Okay, setting screen, so it's on opponent. So this is the highlighted one. I got the gray, I put a gray background on all of these for these spots here. So it makes it look like this is clearly the selected one since it's shown. And then these are actually 3 gray buttons. But the buttons actually obscure the background. So if I click on game rules, I should get to the game rules. There we go. Clearly I don't have the ability to select anything in there yet. That's next session, where I put in the game rules and then change the game engine to make them follow the game rules. That'll be next session. Screen, sound. Ooh, apparently my sound file is missing. But opponent, and then resume. We're back to the game. And notice it doesn't stop anything from occurring on the other side. Here we're in the middle of thinking. Game rules. Go back to resume. It's still thinking. It doesn't actually pause anything. Everything's running in the background. In fact, the animation's still going back there too. So I go back here, you'll catch it in the middle of the animation. So nothing's really lost. I'll do two last quick tweaks on this, and I'll show you the results. First, I'll fix that that missing screen. Clearly, that's not going to go. The other thing I'm going to do is it's sliding back and forth. Yeah, that's not going to fly. I'm going to put a transition in between these two. I'll find out how to do that to where it just instantly flips rather than sliding back and forth. I'll be right back. Okay, here's the final version. I can now get in there. Opponent, game rules, screen, sound, and resume. It all works. Tomorrow we'll get that first game rule screen going. Let me show you what I did very briefly. I did an import for no transition from the library, from the KV library here at the top of the KV file, and then I used it here for the entire ScreenManager of no transition. It's probably a way to make just these four don't transit, but I don't know that it matters that I have a sliding screen from the game screen to the settings screen. In fact, I think I like this being applied to the whole thing anyway, so I'm going to leave that as is. And then, of course, I simply spelled the name wrong on the setting sound screen, so that fixed that. All right, we'll pick things up in the next episode. If you like what you see, please subscribe. Thanks.